Okay. You should now be able to see my screen and the questions that have been asked. So there have been quite a lot of retrospective questions that we didn't have time to get to in the first part. The first one I believe is for Peter about the scope of QUALICHeCK. So Peter.
Yes. So the scope of QUALICHeCK is, let's say, as well new buildings as existing buildings. So it is focusing on both. In principle, it covers all, let's say, all kinds of buildings, but in practice, it's clear that the residential sector, to a lower extent, the office sector, I would say, will probably provide the most information. But I would say that the philosophy, so how create appropriate conditions for better to come to good EPCs, reliable EPCs, or quality of the work, to a large extent, is similar.
Okay. The next two questions, I believe, are for Susanna.
Okay. We did not, in our analysis, we did not look at the calculation method. The calculation method is out of scope of QUALICHeCK, and it's also not true to say that the EPC input data are wrong. They have been chosen according to the rules we have. It means that the range of interpretation is too wide and that we need more precise definitions. Is it important, the next question, is it important to introduce additional or dedicated quality checks for NSEPs? I think the more energy efficient buildings become, the more important is it to maybe introduce additional dedicated quality checks, and also to especially to develop, let's say, specific procedures. Let's put it like this.
Okay, thank you. I believe the next one could be answered by anybody. So, Peter, I don't know if you'd like to state something, but also any of the other speakers who would like to state something on this subject. I think it might be interesting.
Yeah, there's something. So that was currently the impact of the EPBD and the recast EPBD. I would say one interesting element is to know already what is, let's say, available in the EPCs, so statistics about, for example, the EPCs for residential buildings in country X or Y. What we learned from the concerted action is that in quite a number of countries today, this information is not even available. So there is not, from the EPCs, already a reliable picture of what is declared in the EPC. So that's the first thing. So I think in a number of countries, having more information about what are the declared performances in the EPC is the first step. The second step is then, because the question refers to what is the impact, are these EPCs reliable? And that's a key aspect in QUALICHeCK. And then, of course, there is a third aspect, that is, assume that the EPC is a reliable representation of what has been built. To what extent are the predictions in the EPC corresponding with the reality? As you know, there are different aspects which might influence that the reality is not what is predicted. So, but I think at the moment, a major element in the number of countries is lack of statistical information, what is precisely reported in the EPCs.
Okay, thank you. The next two questions were posed to Marina.
Do you use heating degrees for calculation of the U value of construction elements, like wall, openings, roof, etc.? Actually, the U value of these construction elements can be made without using, if I understood the question correctly, without using the degrees of the days, the temperature of the day. Please let me know if this is not what you meant by the question. So the U value is calculated no matter of the degree of the temperature of the day. Regarding the second part of the question, indeed, a lot of problems are caused by reporting and mistakes during the energy performance certificate audit. There needs to be better control by architects of the works, and in order to do that, the architects must understand the value of the energy performance certificate and their duty to their client, so that when they supervise, they require from qualified experts to revise their energy performance certificate and make any changes known to them. Also, what would also help is if there was a control framework on site, so that there was a need after the building was, and also if there was a need after the building was constructed, for the energy performance certificate to be submitted again, so that a new calculation would take place, the energy performance would again be submitted, and the mistakes in the first energy performance calculation would be rectified. Thank you.
Thank you, Marina. The last question for the moment is one which is, I would say, more general, so please feel free, any one of the speakers who would like to provide more information on the concept of energy performance.
I would like to react to that. Clearly, I think training, let's say, is an important issue in the whole discussion, but if you take the specific example, and I think the reference is made to the U value, so basically transmission losses, if you split it up in two parts, that's the one dimension of the U value, on the other hand, the thermal bridges. If you look to the U value, I don't think that the real bottleneck is that the architects, the EPC calculators don't know how to calculate the U value. So I think their training is not, I would say, a priority. Of course, what can be an issue of concern is the thermal conductivity. There are sometimes discussions about thermal conductivity. What is the precise value to be used? I think another reason why we find this kind of problems is at what time in the process the EPC is calculated, and I think also Susanne referred to it. If it is done at the moment of the building permit, I think in quite a number of countries or projects there are changes between the moment of the building permit and the reality. So that you cannot solve by more training, but by, let's say, another process where you indeed allow people to report what has been done. So that, I think, is another reason of the deviation. And then I think another one, but there are more, is the issue of fraud, that the economic pressures might push certain players, let's say, to give a better result than the reality. And of course, with this move to NZEP, which has a cost impact, this pressure is increasing. So that's for the U values there. I think the training is not the bottleneck. There are other reasons which probably create the issue. If you look to thermal bridges there, I think the situation is different. It's clear that thermal bridges is, let's say, more complex to understand. So that's, I think, clearly a training issue to understand how to assess it. Secondly, I think the way to calculate it should also be clarified. If you only refer to the European standard, that typically means the potential of a very complex calculation that whereby different people can use different methods. So I think there is a role for the regulator to make it sufficiently clear and also sufficiently simple. And I think also there is a practical concern. If you don't have an effective compliance framework, you more or less penalize those who do the effort to calculate the thermal bridges, of, let's say, due to their work to get a worse result, then those who don't do the effort to take into account the thermal bridges, so they have less work and they have a better result. And so I think what is the challenge, and I think it's at the core of QUALICHeCK, is to, let's say, give a good overview, and there the source books are very important, an overview of what are potential reasons for, let's say, this not desirable results, and what are potential mechanisms to come to better, let's say, better compliance. And then again, as I said in the introduction, it's up to each country, each stakeholder, each kind of technology to see what in our sector is the most efficient, the most pragmatic way to come to better results.
For the last question on the energy performance, I think it would be good to have any speaker provide some input, and also if you want to comment on any of the previous topics, please do. So you're all unmuted now.
If nobody wants to react, I would like to react, but if other ones, please feel free. I think the energy performance, I would say, is a definition, let's say, which is a result of let's say, some standardization, some normalization. So it is let's say, typically the primary energy consumption according, let's say, given boundary conditions. So it is clear that the real consumption of a building is function of the occupancy, household appliances, and so on. But in principle, all this is let's say, fixed, standardized in the calculation method. And for this given, I would say, set of boundary conditions, also the outdoor climate, you come to, let's say, a calculated energy performance. And that's not fundamentally different from the household appliances. Also, this kilowatt hours, which you find on a refrigerator, is also for given boundary conditions, what kind of temperature inside, and what kind of opening and closing of the door. So you have a standard profile for which you calculate the energy performance. So I think that's the only way you can, in the framework of legislation, if you want to compliance, to come to a robust framework. So you must clearly specify for which calculation, for which conditions you do, and it's for this condition that you calculate the energy performance. Of course, it's important to have trust in it, like the example of the refrigerator. You should have a calculation method which is quite well representative for the reality, so that there is not a very big deviation between what is calculated and what is the reality.
Okay, thank you all. I believe we have no more questions. They have all been answered. So in this case, Peter, perhaps you would like to make a closing for the webinar.
Yes, I think very briefly, so a few concluding comments. So I believe that from that there are, sorry, yeah, I see there was. So I think that from the various presentations, I think you have seen that there are, I would say, quite a number of cases where there are substantial deviations between theory and what is reported. And that's clearly, I would say, one of the, as I said in the beginning, one of the clear, the top priorities of QUALICHeCK. In this phase, it was collecting evidence that there are problems, so helping people to make them aware. Look also in your country or in your sector, what is the problem? Are there problems? And then the second phase, and that will be a topic of future webinars and also of the source books, is trying to bring together interesting approaches which might help, let's say, countries or sectors to come to better compliance. But this was just, let's say, a first webinar where the focus was on what do we find, let's say, on the ground in different countries. So I would like to thank you all for your participation. As Alexander said in the beginning, the webinar will be available in a few weeks' time on the QUALICHeCK website, and we surely will keep you informed of future activities of QUALICHeCK. Thank you.